It's the 6-phase entrepreneur's journey. And it can be really, really important that we understand this, especially if we're in the early stages of, coming up with an idea or launching a business, or we might even have started up. And the reason why it's important is because expectation management is an absolutely essential component of effective entrepreneurship. If we do not learn how to manage our expectations earlier on in the process, we might end up experiencing quite an unnecessary amount of disappointment as we progress. And the other idea here is that, life is about progressing, or business is about progressing on levels and through stages, right? Think about when you were young. I don't know if you can cast your mind back that far. As you can probably gather, I've got a little bit of grey hair. I'm knocking on in my 40s now. Not as old as Russell, but I'm kind of getting on. I can remember in my youth, maybe 12 or 11, I had one of these Nintendo PlayStations. And I used to love Super Mario Kart. When I was playing Super Mario Kart, I remembered that you would play on different levels, and at the end of each kind of level, you would have an end of level devil or an end of level bad guy. And one's ability to develop a strategy for overcoming the bad guy would determine whether one goes up a stage onto a whole new level. And the interesting thing about playing computer games, I don't know if you're a gamer or not, I'm not really a gamer at all, is that every end of level devil is different, requires a new strategy to overcome. Right? What we generally find is that a strategy that may have worked for us in a prior season of business entrepreneurship might not necessarily be the same strategy that we can use again and again and again. So it definitely pays to manage our expectations, remain open-minded and flexible in our approach. It requires generally heart, all right, to engage in this entrepreneurial journey. A passion and a genuine desire to accomplish something that's greater than one's self. Right, an old mentor once I used to have a bit of a problem with kind of frustration and temper in my younger years, and this old mentor once explained to me that sometimes our greatest frustrations can actually point us in a direction that we might want to think about travelling in. If we find ourselves frustrated about a void in society or in some sort of organisation, or if we can see that there's just a really desperate need for a product or a service to drive the world forward or society in some way, then it's not anyone else's responsibility to make this happen. This might be the opportunity that presents us. Some people don't recognise opportunity. All right, many people want opportunity, but it's not always so easy to recognise, because it tends to come along dressed in a pair of overalls looking like hard work. All right, and I know that you're okay with a little bit of hard work. So let's look at the 6-phase entrepreneurial journey. I want to propose that all things entrepreneurial begin with inspiration. All right, if you are not inspired by something, all right, then you're not inspired. Right? All entrepreneurship is naturally inspired. If you've heard of the old terminology that a person without a vision for their future might stand at risk of going round and round in circles in their present, this is very much the case. Entrepreneurship is always about moving forward. It's about advancing, progressing in some way, naturally getting closer towards the end vision that we are able to see. Now, inspiration tends to begin with some form of profound realization of the word I've used here, a personal awakening. All right, now I don't know if you can relate to this. For me, the personal awakening was, I could do something really good here. I could start a business. I don't have all the answers, but I'm really, really passionate. I'm really interested about making a positive difference in this aspect of society, so I'm just going to do something about it. All right, now I've not met too many entrepreneurs who had all of the answers at the start of the journey, and this is why we call it a journey, all right, because we pick up the answers as we go. And this is essentially what kind of gears us up and prepares us for stage or level number 2, which is the learning phase. Now, this might be where you're at right now. It might be the case you're a bit further down the line, and that's also okay. But the entrepreneurial journey is about learning. It's about never remaining still. It's about not becoming constant, because he or she who remains constant can sometimes end up finding themselves becoming irrelevant. And we don't want to become irrelevant, all right? Entrepreneurship tends to walk hand in hand with innovation, and innovation is generally about finding new solutions for existing or old problems, all right? Or finding new ways to manage tensions. So this is where we must learn. We've sometimes got to get our head in the books. We've sometimes got to do a little bit of competitor analysis. We might want to do a little bit of business planning. We might want to look at what other products or services are out there, so that we know that the idea that we're considering launching is a relatively good idea with a relatively reasonable chance of success. So we learn, we gain knowledge, and we develop skills alongside like-minded others. And this is why there are so many entrepreneurship incubators around the world. I don't know if you've heard this term. When I first met Russell, I think I was on an entrepreneurship incubator back then, and this was, I think it was a Scottish government-funded initiative. I think it was called the Acorn Initiative. I'm not sure if it still exists or not. It was essentially a group of people, myself and many others, we're all at this kind of startup point. So gaining knowledge and skills alongside like-minded others is just part of the process. It's part of the process that we actually don't ever want to leave. We just want to build upon. At some point, right, we must found. Right? Founding is about us executing upon a passion, a vision, or an idea. I had this idea that I can help former military personnel to manage their way through this transition from military life to civilian life. Well, what went on from there? That was the starting point. I developed skill, competency through this process. I learned how to communicate. I learned how to facilitate groups. I learned how to train, right? Not through formal education, not through getting certificates or accreditation, but through hands-on experience, because I wanted to. I was executing upon something that I was genuinely passionate about. Over time, I realized that some of these men and women, their lives were beginning to turn around, not because I was doing anything, but because I'd learned how to ask the right questions that would get them thinking about solving their own problems. All right? There's an old principle, and this is that personal empowerment comes about through personal responsibility. The more responsibility we take for our lives, for our business, for our visions, our hopes, our aspirations, all that sort of thing, the more naturally empowered we become to take the action steps, the more we learn, the further and the more progress we go and we take. So as I'm now starting to really facilitate positive change in these guys, they're asking me questions. Ken, can you teach us how to do what you do? So I created new opportunity for myself through simply executing upon that which I was passionate about. Opportunity presented itself. This then took me back to the drawing board where I'm now, learning. How do I teach other people how to do what I've just done? Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you get into some sort of training enterprise here, but what I'm trying to demonstrate, hopefully, is that entrepreneurship is just a natural evolutionary process. All right, we build upon the set of foundations that we laid in the last phase of our journey. So here I founded, then it was time to start up. The company that started up was a training organisation that served to essentially equip and train people to deliver training and become effective coaches, which is something that I had become relatively experienced and competent in at this phase of the journey. So this now had been launched for a couple of years, and that was when I then connected with Russell, right? Because I realised that the business works, the training is being delivered, and whilst we're able to get a degree of result and reach and impact so many people, scaling up requires something else. We're talking about duplicating systems and processes. We're looking at increasing incomes, reducing outgoings, and we're going to have a few conversations about scaling up later on, but it's about sustained growth via duplication and process. All right? We don't necessarily need to worry about duplication and process in the early stages. We just need a system or a process that works, that allows us to deliver a product or a service to an intended market. All right, scaling up is essentially about how we do more of this, all right, on a larger, possibly even an international scale. But we need our business model to be working first and foremost. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to scale. Now, what I want to propose, all right, I want to here give you vision, which isn't just about scaling a business. It's essentially about who it is that you go on to become. And this is a champion. If you're able to follow this entrepreneurial journey, yes, you're going to make money. Yes, you might build a large organization. Yes, you might change the world in the process. And if you are able to do this in a scalable and a sustainable way, then eventually you are going to be identified and respected as a champion in your field of expertise.